So, good morning. First year Bcom Computer Applications. First year Bcom Computer Applications, Semester 2, Programming in C and C++. So, in Unit 1 and Unit 2, one of the compulsory essay type question is data types. One of the compulsory essay type question is data types. So, data types in C. So today's topic is, it is a compulsory essay type question which is coming from Unit 1. The today's topic is data types in C or C language. It is a compulsory essay type question. So what are data types? What is the definition of data type? What are the different types of data types? All these things we may discuss here. So a data type specifies the type of data that a variable can store, such as integer, floating, character, etc. So what is a data type? What is a data type? Of data or information. Different types of data or information. A data type specifies the type of data that a variable can store, such as integer, floating, character, etc. So generally data types are used to store different types of data or information, in a program by using some variables in internal memory or a memory location of a computer. Data types specify how we enter data into our programs and what type of data we enter. So generally data types clearly explains or clearly describes about what are the different data items to be, or what are the different variables to be used to store the data or information in the memory, and which type of data, which which type of data is also used to store in the internal part of a memory. So data types specify how we enter data into our programs and what type of data we enter. Next, C language has some predefined set of data types to handle various kinds of data that we can use in our program. So generally C language have some predefined means already existed or already available data types that we can directly use them, use them in our programs. So these data types have different storage capacities. So every data type having different types of memories, having different types of characteristics or different types of capacities, sizes, ranges, etc. So picture explains about what are the different explains about what are the different types of data or information used. So here data types are basically three types. First one is primitive data types. Or primary data types. So basically this table explains about what are the different types of data types. So basically data types are three types. First one is primitive data types or primary data types. Second one is derived data types. Third one is user defined data types. So what is primitive data type or a primary data type? So data types are basically three types: primitive data types or primary data types. Second one is derived data types, and third one is user defined data types. Data types another compulsory essay type question, first unit and second unit lot. So primitive data types or primary data types. What are primitive data types or what are primary data types? Generally primary data types are basic data types they are also known as basic data types, are also known as main data types in C language, and all the other data types are generally formed. All the other data types are generally formed with or formed using these primary data types only. So, int, char, float, double, void. So, what are the primary or primitive data types? Int means integers or integer data type. Char means character data types. Float means float data type. Double means double data type. Void means null data type. Two types again, double and long double. So, what are integer data types, and what are the different types of integer data types, and how we use integer data types, and what are the what are the ranges of integer data types, like that we will discuss about all these things. So, what are integer data types, Bhavan? So, data types are three types: primitive data type or primary data type, derived data type, third one is user defined data type. So, primitive data types are generally also called as main data types or primary data types. So, why? Because primary means from these data types only, remaining data types like derived data types and user defined data types are formed. So, what are primary data types? Primary data types are int, char, float, double, void. Int means to store integer type of data or numbers. Char means to store, use it to store character type of data. Character means a single character, means generally if you want to store a single character in a variable, we may use char data type. Float means real numbers. Float data type means real numbers or floating point numbers or decimal numbers, means numbers with, if we use numbers with some decimal point, we may use float data type. Next one is, fourth one is double data type. Double means long real numbers or long floating numbers. Again, double data types are two types, double and long double. Fifth one is void data type, means there is no void means it is nothing. Void means nothing at blank, means if any variable or any function with any without any using any generally, what are the different types of integer data types? Signed integers, unsigned integers, short integers, signed short integers, and unsigned short integers, and long data types. So, what are integer data types? Integers means whole numbers. What are integers data types? Integers means whole numbers, or whole number means, what is a whole number? Means a number without any decimal point, or a number without any decimal number or decimal point or a decimal point symbol is called as integer data types. So, integer data types are basically used to store whole numbers only, and basically integer data types have some plus or minus symbols, optional plus or minus symbols, and without having any decimal point. Next is integer data types are again different data types. First one is signed integers and unsigned integers. So, what are signed integers and what are unsigned integers? Means signed integers means decimal. What are signed integers? Integer number with some symbol, are called as signed integers. For example, plus 100 and minus 100. Plus 100, by default, if you won't give any symbol or any symbol before it, it is called as signed integers. So, for example, if you give plus 100, it is a signed integer, or if you give minus 100, it is also example for signed integers. So what are signed integers? Signed integers have some predefined. What are unsigned integers? Unsigned integers are generally used with only used with positive numbers only, means numbers with, if any number or numbers with only positive numbers, or if you use, or if you want to use only positive numbers, means there are no concept of negative numbers. For example, if you want to enter some marks, example is marks. Marks means if you declare a variable called marks as integer, example is int marks. Generally marks are having only positive numbers, means for example, if some person or some student got some 65 marks, means it is a plus, there is no concept of plus 65 or minus 65. Such type of data items are called as unsigned or signed positive, signed data types. So again, integer data types are different types: signed integers, unsigned integers, short integers and long integers. Short integers means only short values or short uh, small values of integers, whereas long integers means lengthy or long integral or integer values. Next is signed short. Again, fourth type is signed short integers and unsigned short integers. So all these are the different types of integer or int data types. So generally int or integer data types are generally used to define various, or define or give various generally two types: signed char and unsigned char. Character data types are basically two types: signed char and unsigned char. What is a signed char and what is unsigned char? Means signed char means only character with some positive some positive symbol. Unsigned means character symbols or character values with some negative symbols. Next is third type of data type is float data type. Third data type is called as float data types. So float data types are generally used to store real numbers. Float data types are generally used to store and declare real numbers or decimal numbers and some decimal point values like that. So char, next data type is char. What is char? Char means it is mainly used to define and declare క్యారెక్టర్ డేటా టైప్స్. అంటే మనం ఏదైనా క్యారెక్టర్స్ని స్టోర్ చేయడాన్ని అలాగే యూస్ చేయడానికి మనకి క్యార్ డేటా టైప్ అనేది మనము యూస్ చేస్తాం. క్యారెక్టర్ డేటా టైప్ని మనము స్టోర్ చేయడానికి యూస్ చేయడానికి మనకి క్యార్ అనే డేటా టైప్ అనేది యూస్ చేస్తాం. సో క్యార్ అనేది మనం దేనికి యూస్ చేస్తామంటే జనరల్గా క్యార్ డేటా టైప్ ఈస్ యూజ్ టు స్టోర్ సింగిల్ డేటా టైప్, సింగిల్ క్యారెక్టర్. Char data type is generally used to store a single character in a C program. C program of data or information. Again, char is of two types: signed char and unsigned char. Signed char means characters with some signed symbols, and unsigned char means characters with characters with some negative symbols. Third data type, third type primary data type is float. Float means, what is a float number or real number? A number with some decimal point. A number with some decimal point is called as floating numbers or float data types are real data types or in integer or floating point numbers. So again floats are different types, and double double is long float numbers. Float means if you want to use lengthy decimal numbers, then you may define the variable as with double. Again double are two types, double and long double. And void data type is it may simply used to return null values. Void data type is used to return null data types, null values or null data types. For you defining null data types and null functions and null data types, we may use void data type. So integers are whole numbers. Integers are generally used to define and declare whole numbers or numbers without any decimal point. Now, integer values are different types. Integer data types are different types, like signed integers, long integers, signed long integers, and signed unsigned long integers, like that. So we start with we may discuss about start with primitive or primary data types. So what are different primary data types in C language, or they are also called as primary or primitive data types. So first one is integer or integer data type. First one is integer data type or int data type. Integers are used to store whole numbers. Means generally integers means numbers without having any or without having any decimal point inside them. So all numbers without containing or without having decimal points within them or in it. That such type of numbers are called as prime integer types or integer data types. So size and range of integer type on 16-bit machines are generally integer types are different types. Generally integer data types are different types, like int or signed int, like int or signed int. Generally int or signed int occupies 2 bytes. Int or signed int occupies 2 bytes of data, 2 bytes of data or internal memory. The range is from -3 to 768 to +3 to 767. Next is, so all these are different types of integer data types. All these are different types of integer data types. First one is int or signed int. Second one is unsigned int. Third one is short So what are the different types of integer data types? So what are the different types of integer data types available in C language? So integer data types are int or signed int. Int or signed int. Generally int or signed int means it occupies 2 bytes size. It occupies 2 bytes size and the range is -3 to 7682 +3 to 767. Unsigned int. So unsigned, signed int and unsigned int. Unsigned means only positive numbers. Unsigned means only positive numbers. Signed means, signed integers means both positive, supports both positive and negative, both numbers. So unsigned int means it is generally unsigned int data type is also used to store up to 2 bytes of, it is used to store up to 2 bytes of information, and the range is 0 to 65535. So the range is 0 to 65535. The range is also 0 to 65535. Next is short int. Next is short int or signed short int. Type in C languages of integer type is short int. Short int or signed short int. Generally short int occupies only 1 byte. Generally short int occupies only 1 byte of data or information in the internal memory, and the range of values are generally minus 128 to plus 127 only. Next, fourth type is unsigned short int. Unsigned short int, another data type is unsigned short int, means generally it occupies 1 byte. When unsigned short int occupies only 1 byte, and the range of values is from 0 to 255. Next, long int or signed long int. Next another type of data type is long int or signed long int. Another data type is long int or signed long int. Generally long int occupies 4 bytes of data or information. Generally long int occupies 4 bytes of data or information, and the data ranges is minus 214748368482 plus that number. So, and unsigned long int also occupies 4 bytes of data, and the range is 0 to this number 4 to 94 like that. Second primary data type is float or real numbers. Second type of data type is float or real numbers. So, what are floating numbers? What are decimal numbers? Have some decimal point inside them, some decimal point in it. So, what are floating points? Numbers. What are floating points? Are floating point numbers. Numbers with decimal point. Floating point. What are floating point numbers? Or decimal point numbers or real numbers. They are also called as floating point data types, or real numbers, or real number data type, or decimal number point data type. So, what are floating point numbers? Floating point numbers are numbers those whose the numbers with some decimal point, numbers with some decimal points. So, generally floating types are used to store real numbers. Generally floating data types or floating point numbers are generally used to store real numbers. Generally floating point numbers are used to store real numbers. What are real numbers? Real numbers means numbers with some decimal point. Numbers with decimal point are called as real numbers. Numbers with decimal points are called as real numbers. So, floating point numbers are two types. First one is float and second one is double. So, there are two types of floating point numbers are used. First one is float, second one is double. Generally float data types occupies 4 bytes, and double data types occupies 8 bytes. So, in general float data type occupies 4 bytes, and double data types occupies 8 bytes. So, what is the range of a floating point number? So, what is 3.4 e minus 38 means 3.4 into 10 power minus 38. So, double, and double means what are double? Double means double the size of the floating numbers. Double, what is the double? Double data type generally occupies 8 bytes, and it contains, what is the double data type? Double data types means it is the double the size of floating point numbers. It is the double the size of floating point numbers, and floating point numbers occupies 4 bytes, whereas double occupies 8 bytes. Long double, third type of floating point type of data type is long. So, long double, it is called as third type of floating point numbers is called as long double. So, what is the long double? Long double generally occupies 10 bytes, and the range is 3.4 e minus 4932 like that. Character data type. So float data types, floating data types or float data types, float or floating data types are three types. First one is float, size is 4 bytes, range is 3.4 e to like that. Second one is double, double means long float, double means long float, size is 8 bytes, size is 8 bytes, and long double means it occupies 10 bytes, and it is number. Long double means uh, again double the size of the double data type. Next, another frequently used data type in C language is character data type or char data type. Another frequently used data type is character or char data type. So what is a character or char data type? Character types are used to store character values. So char or character data types are generally used to store a single character or a single symbol or single data or information. Generally character data types occupies only 1 byte of internal memory, and there are we can store any type of data, any type of either numerics, either digits, either characters, space, symbols used with character data type. Generally char or signed char, generally char. Again character data types are two types, signed char and unsigned char, and generally char or unsigned char or char or signed char or unsigned character occupies only 1 byte. It occupies only 1 byte of data information, and the data range is -128. What is the data range? The data range is -128 to +127 for character or signed character. For unsigned character, the size is also 1 byte, and the range is between 0 to 255. The range is between 0 to 255. Void data type or void. What is void? Void type means no values, means if any variable or if any function doesn't return, if any variable or any function does not return any written values, then we may use void data type. Generally void data types are used with functions only. So generally void data types are used with functions only, means void data types are generally not used with any numeric data types or any character data types or any floating point real number data type like that. So generally void data types are frequently or generally used with functions only, along with functions only. So void data types means no value or no written value. So void data type. What is void data type? Void data type means there is null data type. Void data type is also called as null data type, means a function in C language whenever returns generally a function in C language returns some value, some type of value to the main program or main function, means generally it returns some integers, generally it returns some characters, or generally it returns some data type, anything to the main function. If any function doesn't return any value to the main function, in such case we may use void data types. So void type means no value. This is usually used to specify the type of function which returns nothing. we will get acquainted to this data type as so generally void type is used. Generally void type is generally in general used with only functions in C language, and they cannot be used with some integer values or ordinary or primary data types. So derived data types. So as we know that data types are two types. Data types are basically two types. First one is primary data type or primitive data types. Second one is derived data types. So data types are basically not only in C language, in any other languages also, like C++, Java, for like that. Data types are basically two types. First one is primary data type or primitive data types. Second one is derived data types. Second one is derived data. What is derived? Derived means formed or created with someone or formed with someone. So derived data means generally all the derived data types are formed or created with by using other primary data types only. Means generally in general all the derived data types are formed or created with other primary data types only, like int, char, float, double, long, like that. So what are derived data types examples? What are the examples of derived data types? Arrays, pointers, structures, union, enumeration. So what are the derived data types? Arrays, pointers, structures, unions, and enumeration. So derived data types are based two types, again five types. So first one is arrays. What is an array? Arrays are sequences of data items having homogeneous values. Means generally what is an array? Array is a collection of similar type of data or information. Array is nothing but it is a collection of similar type of data or information stored in continuous manner in internal memory. They have adjacent memory locations to store. So generally arrays are stored in adjacent memory locations or side by side memory locations in memory or internal memory. Array in C stores multiple values of the same data type. Arrays in C stores multiple values of the same data type. So generally arrays are used to define similar type of data or same type of data in continuous manner. Means we can have an array of integers, chars, floats, doubles, like that. So generally arrays are used with integers, or arrays are created with integers, characters, floats, double, like that, long, etc. Next, another type of second type of derived data type is pointers. So what is a pointer? Pointers are considered by many to the complex in C, but that is not the case. Simply put, a pointer just a variable that stores the address of another variable. So pointer is another array. Arrays and pointers are two another important concepts. Arrays and pointers are derived data types, and these are also two important concepts. Later we will discuss elaborately about all these things in the next classes. Next is user defined data types. Third type of data types are called as user defined data types. Generally user defined data types are structs, means structures. Generally user defined data types are called as structs or structures. Second one is unions. Third one is enumeration or enumerated. All these are later we will discuss about all these things. These five, like first one is arrays, second one is pointers, third one is structures, fourth one is union, fifth one is enumeration. All these concepts we may discuss in the next classes. So what are we conclude this PPT presentation with highlighting the just highlighting the topics once again. So what are the data types? Data types are generally used to store. What are data types? The data types are generally used to store different types of data or information. Different types of data or information in C language by using some variables in the internal memory or internal storage. So generally there are three types of data types are used generally, or basically there are three types of data types are used. First one is primitive data type or primary data types. Second one is derived data type or derived data types. Third one is user defined data types. So what are the primary data types and what are derived data types and what are user defined data types? So primary data types means these are the main data types. These are the main data types or primary data types, generally used to define the variables in different ways. Generally used to define the variables in different types to store different data or information in various variables. So what are the primary data types? First one is int, means integers. So what are the primary data types? Primary data types are the main data types in a C language, generally used to store some primary data information in the variables in the memory. So first one is int, means integers, used to store integers in a C language. Second one is char, means character. Second one is char or character, generally used to store character type of data, generally used to store char or character data type of data. Third one is float. Float data types are generally used to store real numbers or floating point numbers or decimal numbers in C language. Fourth one is double. Again double or data types are two types, double and long double. These are the generally, what is a double data type? Generally double data type is the means it is the double the size of the floating numbers. Double or long double data. What is the double data type? Double data types are nothing but it generally used to store double the size of the floating point numbers. And another type is long double. Long double is also the used to store the double the size of the double data type. Fifth one is void data type. Generally void means null or no specific data types. Generally void data type is used with functions, along with functions only. All these are called as primitive data types or primary data types. Second one is derived data types. So derived data types are generally, what is derived? Derived data types means they can be derived or they can be formed. Derived data types means they can be derived or they can be formed with other data types. So generally, what are derived data types? Derived data types means they can be formed or they can be created with or they can be formed with primary data types, or they can be formed or created with primary data types or other data types like arrays. First one is arrays, second one is pointers, third one is references, and third type of data type is called as user defined data type. Third type of data types are called as user defined data types. Generally to create first one is structure. What are the examples for user defined data types? Structures. Second one is unions. Third one is enumeration or enumerated data types. So what are the user defined data types? First one is called as structures, second one is called as unions, third one is called as enumeration or enumerated data types. So generally arrays are created and structures are created with so all these are different concepts, and all these are different essay questions also. All these are means like arrays, pointers, structures, unions, enumeration, enum or enumerated data types. All these are different chapters or units. Later we will discuss about all these things in detail. Thank you very much.